unify, inspire, act. This is Detroit 2020.
Of course, September 11th changed everything for Americans, but especially Arab Americans who faced heightened prejudice, government surveillance, and political scapegoating.
Detroit, of course, is home to one of the country's largest Arab populations. And joining us tonight is one of the editors of Arab Detroit 9/11, Life in the Terror Decade, Sally Howell. And Sally, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
My pleasure.
Our first question to you, I mean, 9/11, 10 years ago, but how was the Arab community affected after that attack?
Well, in the immediate aftermath of the attack, there was a backlash that Arab Americans suffered. About 15% of the local community, some stores were attacked. In some cases, people were physically assaulted. Most of the backlash here in Detroit, however, was just people saying, go home, go back where you came from, or something like this. The backlash here in Detroit was much less than in other parts of the country, about 10 percentage points lower. And we argue that that is because the local Arab American community here is so old historically and is so well established and is so known to other Detroiters. So that protected the community to a certain extent.
They're more integrated into the rest of the Detroit society, basically.
Absolutely. I mean, there are plenty of newly arrived Arab Americans, and there are plenty of people whose families have been here 100 years.
Now, I've talked to a lot of Arab Americans over the last few months who say, even though they agree that there were these prejudices and so forth, but probably less so than other places, but they do find out that every time somebody comes to town like a Terry Jones and stirs things up looking to make point someplace, that this feeling all comes back and they start fearing for themselves again.
Yeah, it's not just the Terry Joneses. It's, I mean, Terry Jones is certainly the prime example of this. But just when you turn on the news and you see all these stories about Peter King holding the hearings in Washington where he's asking really if Muslim Americans can be good, legitimate American citizens, this sort of is wearying for people over time. And we've certainly seen an uptick in terms of negative attitudes towards Arabs and Muslim Americans, and in particular hostility towards Muslims, vandalism of mosques. There is an organized campaign out there in America right now. So we had an early backlash, a calming down period, and now things are heating up again.
Absolutely, because right now we see it in the news. 25 states are trying to adopt an anti-Sharia law right here in America. You know, we know that you're a professor of history and Arab American studies at the University of Michigan in Dearborn. So do you have class discussions about issues like this at the university? And what do young people think about this? Are they totally oblivious, or are they right in the moment?
Well, it really depends on the young person, of course. We have a lot of young people who are very aware of what's happening, non-Arab young people who are really interested in the Arab American community and are trying to go to Lebanon to learn Arabic and things like this because they're so interested in the population. We have a lot of Arab Americans who are, of course, very concerned because it's their families that are being affected by things. I've had students whose parents are who have been accused of all sorts of terrorism-related charges, people who have lost their jobs, people whose situation is pretty dire, and then at the same time I have Arab American students who don't think about this at all. So there's a real mix.
So when we take a look at the book here, what will we learn reading this book then? So give us kind of the overview.
Well, there are several things you'll learn. One, you'll learn how large and diverse and historically deep the Arab community is here. You've got people from 7 or 8 different Arabic countries, Muslims, Christians, Chaldeans, Copts, all sorts of different kinds of people who really identify in different ways with the Middle East, with being Arab, with being Chaldean, with being American, that there's just an incredible diversity of experiences. You'll learn that the terror decade has been obviously a difficult one for the Muslim and Arab communities, but it's also been a period of real growth, institutional growth. We have a new large Arab American museum in Dearborn. We've had 15 new mosques open in the last decade, and more than 20 mosques have doubled their square footage. So there's this real investment in the local infrastructure. You also see a lot more Arab Americans and Muslim Americans really thinking about their role in American society, participating, all these charities that are trying to link up the suburbs and the inner city, people who are participating in the U.S. military. All of this diversity is really a part of the Muslim American, Arab American experience.
Well, Sally, we appreciate you coming in and talking about your book, and I think the one message we probably do want to give our viewers, if you don't know people, no matter what their race, no matter what their religious background, just talk to them.
Exactly. And by the way, you can go to our website, Detroit2020.com, and we will have information on this subject and also where you can get hold of that book.
Oh, thank you.